History has a strange way of hiding its greatest secrets in the most ordinary places. Sometimes they lie beneath forests, beneath oceans, or buried under the ruins of forgotten civilizations. But every so often, history chooses a place so unexpected that it changes the way we see the world forever. Imagine living in a quiet home where every room feels familiar, every wall has been touched 1,000 times, and every corner holds nothing more mysterious than the memories of everyday life. Then one afternoon, while making a simple renovation, you notice something unusual. One wall doesn't sound solid. It answers your hammer with a hollow echo. Curious, you strike it again. A crack appears. Another blow, and part of the stone suddenly gives way. Before you is not another room, but a breath of cold air drifting from complete darkness. No ordinary basement breathes. You widen the opening just enough to look inside, expecting perhaps an old storage space abandoned long ago. Instead, your flashlight disappears into a narrow passage carved deep into the earth. The tunnel bends out of sight, inviting equal parts curiosity and caution. Every instinct tells you to walk away. Yet another voice, one that has led explorers, inventors, and dreamers throughout history, urges you to take just one more step. The passage opens into a chamber. Then another. Then another. Soon it becomes impossible to keep count. Rooms connect to corridors. Corridors descend into stairways. Stairways lead to entire neighborhoods hidden beneath the ground. What began as a routine home repair slowly reveals one of the greatest discoveries of the 20th century. Beneath an ordinary house in the heart of Cappadocia lay an underground city unlike anything the modern world believed possible. It contained homes where families once laughed together, kitchens where meals filled the air with the scent of fresh bread, schools where children learned, churches where prayers echoed softly through stone halls, stables that sheltered animals, storage rooms packed with grain, wineries, workshops, wells, and an astonishing network of ventilation shafts that carried fresh air through level after level of solid volcanic rock. It was not built for dozens of people. It was built to shelter nearly 20,000 men, women, and children. For weeks, even months, entire communities could disappear beneath the earth while danger passed above them, emerging only when the world outside became safe once again. But who possessed the vision to imagine such a place? Who had the patience to carve an entire city by hand without modern machines? More importantly, what kind of fear or determination could convince thousands of people that living beneath the earth was safer than living beneath the open sky? These are not simply questions about architecture or archaeology. They are questions about survival, faith, courage, and the extraordinary lengths ordinary people will go to protect those they love. Tonight, we are not merely exploring tunnels beneath a mountain. We are stepping into the lives of people who refused to surrender to fear, who transformed solid stone into hope itself, and who left behind a masterpiece so remarkable that centuries passed before the modern world realized it had been standing above one of humanity's greatest achievements all along. Before we reach the deepest chamber, however, we must first understand the land that made such an impossible city possible, because every great mystery begins long before the moment it is finally discovered. The deeper archaeologists descended, the more one unsettling realization refused to leave their minds. This place should not have existed. Even by today's standards, constructing a city capable of protecting thousands of people beneath solid rock would demand remarkable planning, engineering, and organization. Yet here it stood, carved centuries before electricity, steel machinery, hydraulic equipment, or modern surveying instruments. Every level revealed another puzzle. Ventilation shafts plunged more than 50 meters through the earth, not randomly, but with astonishing precision, delivering fresh air to chambers spread across multiple floors. Modern engineers studying the design discovered that these shafts did far more than provide oxygen. They helped regulate temperature, removed smoke from kitchens, reduced humidity, and created a living environment that remained surprisingly comfortable regardless of the burning summer heat or freezing winter winds above. Even today, visitors often notice the cool, steady air flowing through passages that have remained underground for centuries. Whoever designed this city understood principles of airflow long before those principles were explained in scientific textbooks. Water presented another challenge that the builders solved with remarkable foresight. Wells reached deep into underground water sources, allowing families to survive without returning to the surface. More importantly, many of these wells were accessible only from within the city itself. An invading force might discover one on the surface, but poisoning the community's drinking supply would prove nearly impossible because the people below controlled access. It was an invisible layer of security, hidden within another layer of security, revealing minds that constantly anticipated the next danger before it arrived. Then there were the doors. Calling them doors hardly does them justice. Imagine standing before a perfectly carved circular stone taller than most adults. Its surface smooth from generations of use, its weight so immense that moving it should require tremendous effort. Yet from inside the tunnel, carefully positioned grooves and balance allowed defenders to roll the stone into place with surprising efficiency, sealing an entire passage in moments. Once closed, only a small opening remained, just large enough to observe approaching strangers or defend the entrance if necessary. To an attacker unfamiliar with the city's design, every corridor became a trap. Narrow passages prevented large groups from advancing together. Sharp turns eliminated clear lines of sight. Defenders always knew the terrain better than anyone attempting to enter. It was architecture transformed into strategy. But perhaps the greatest achievement was not the engineering itself. It was understanding human nature. Imagine children waking after several days underground. They still needed laughter, routine, and hope. Adults still needed meaningful work. Meals still had to be prepared. Animals required care. Faith needed a place to gather people together. Daily life could not simply pause because danger waited outside. So the city became something far greater than a hiding place. It became a functioning society. Bakers continued baking. Teachers continued teaching. Blacksmiths repaired essential tools. Families shared meals by the warm glow of oil lamps. Prayers echoed softly through carved chapels where voices rose toward ceilings shaped by hands that believed survival required more than food and shelter. It required purpose. In many ways, Derinkuyu demonstrates one of humanity's greatest strengths. Civilization is not defined by magnificent palaces or towering monuments. It is defined by ordinary people refusing to let fear erase their way of life. Every chamber tells the same quiet story. Someone cared enough to think about tomorrow. Someone believed children deserved a future. Someone carved another room not for themselves, but for generations they would never meet. That simple decision, repeated thousands of times across centuries, transformed bare volcanic stone into one of history's greatest monuments to resilience. Yet even after decades of study, one mystery continues to challenge historians. Derinkuyu was extraordinary on its own, but evidence suggested it was never truly alone. Hidden beyond some of its tunnels lay connections leading toward other underground settlements scattered throughout Cappadocia, raising an astonishing possibility. What if this wasn't a single hidden city? What if it was part of an entire underground world stretching silently beneath the landscape where countless families could move, communicate, and survive while life above continued completely unaware? That possibility changes everything, because the story of Derinkuyu is no longer about one remarkable discovery. It becomes the story of a civilization that mastered the art of disappearing without ever truly being lost. Imagine that you are 12 years old, and the only world you have ever known suddenly disappears behind a wall of stone. Above you, footsteps fade into silence as the final entrance is sealed. Sunlight vanishes. The familiar sounds of birds, wind, and distant conversations are replaced by the gentle crackle of oil lamps and the quiet murmur of hundreds of people sharing the same uncertain future. Somewhere above, an invading force searches the village, believing victory has already been won. They open empty homes, search abandoned streets, and find little more than cold fireplaces and forgotten tools. To them, the settlement appears deserted. They cannot imagine that only a few meters below their feet an entire community is holding its breath. Time begins to move differently underground. Days are no longer measured by sunrise or sunset, but by routines carefully preserved to keep fear from taking control. Children continue learning because knowledge is one of the few treasures no enemy can steal. Bakers prepare bread from grain stored months earlier. Families gather to share stories, reminding one another that they are not prisoners beneath the earth. They are guardians of everything their ancestors entrusted to them. Elders repeat the history of their people, not simply to pass the time, but to ensure that every child understands why sacrifice today could preserve generations tomorrow. Even laughter becomes an act of quiet resistance. Every smile says the same thing: we are still here. Yet beneath this remarkable discipline lies an invisible battle that every person must fight alone. How long can hope survive without seeing the sky? How do parents comfort frightened children when they themselves cannot know whether the danger above is past? Every strange sound echoing through the tunnels raises new questions. Was it shifting stone or footsteps? Did someone discover an entrance? Has another village fallen? Nobody knows. That uncertainty may have been the greatest burden of all. History often celebrates warriors who charge into battle, but Derinkuyu reminds us that courage wears many faces. Sometimes bravery means waiting. Sometimes it means protecting life instead of risking it. Sometimes the strongest decision a leader can make is refusing to fight a battle that would destroy the very people he hopes to defend. That lesson reaches far beyond ancient Cappadocia. Throughout history, civilizations have survived not because they possessed the most powerful armies, but because ordinary men and women adapted faster than the dangers surrounding them. They changed their strategies without abandoning their values. They protected their children without surrendering their identity. They accepted temporary hardship in exchange for a future worth living. Derinkuyu stands as a monument to that timeless wisdom. Every tunnel whispers the same message across the centuries. Survival belongs not only to the strongest, but to those willing to think differently when the world changes around them. Perhaps that is why visitors who descend into its cool stone passages often describe something difficult to explain. It is not fear. It is not sadness. It is a profound respect for people they will never meet. Running your hand across walls polished smooth by countless generations, you realize that every mark was made by someone with dreams remarkably similar to your own. They wanted safety for their families. They hoped tomorrow would be kinder than today. They worried, celebrated, worked, laughed, prayed, and believed that their sacrifices mattered, even if history never remembered their names. Remarkably, history almost didn't. Had that ordinary homeowner never questioned the hollow sound inside his wall, this astonishing world might have remained hidden for many more generations, its stories buried beneath quiet homes and peaceful streets. Yet perhaps the greatest surprise was still waiting. As archaeologists expanded their investigations, they uncovered evidence suggesting that Derinkuyu was only one chapter in a much larger story, one involving dozens of underground settlements connected across Cappadocia, revealing that what had once seemed like an isolated masterpiece may actually have been part of one of the most extraordinary survival networks ever created in the ancient world. And when that realization finally emerged, historians were forced to ask an even greater question. If people could hide an entire civilization beneath the earth for centuries, what other chapters of human history might still be waiting silently beneath our feet, undiscovered, unnoticed, and patiently waiting for someone curious enough to look beyond the obvious? Today, thousands of visitors descend the worn stone stairways of Derinkuyu each year, but no modern tour can truly recreate what this place once meant. The cool air feels refreshing, the passages seem adventurous, and the chambers invite photographs and quiet amazement. Yet if these walls could speak, they would tell a very different story. They would tell of mothers calming frightened children as distant sounds echoed from above. They would remember fathers listening in complete silence, hoping the footsteps they heard belonged to neighbors rather than invaders. They would recall elders whose greatest responsibility was not leading armies, but preserving hope when uncertainty stretched from one day into the next. Every polished step beneath your feet was shaped by people carrying water, food, tools, and sleeping children through these narrow corridors, trusting that the darkness surrounding them was not a prison but a bridge to another sunrise. That simple truth transforms Derinkuyu from an archaeological wonder into something far more meaningful. It is a reminder that humanity's greatest achievements are often born during its hardest moments. Comfort rarely produces extraordinary ideas. Necessity does. Fear alone never carved these chambers. Love did. The desire to protect a family, preserve a community, defend a faith, and ensure that children would inherit something greater than fear itself drove generation after generation to continue expanding this hidden world beneath the earth. Every tunnel represented another promise. Every room declared that giving up was never an option. Long before architects drew blueprints on paper, anonymous builders carried impossible visions in their minds, patiently removing one piece of stone after another until imagination became reality. They knew they might never receive recognition. They would never see tourists marveling at their work, historians praising their ingenuity. Still, they continued, because they understood a timeless principle that every generation eventually rediscovers. The greatest things we build are often for people we will never meet. That idea reaches beyond ancient Cappadocia and into our own lives. We may never carve cities beneath mountains, Yet every thoughtful decision we make can become a foundation for someone else's future. Parents shape children. Teachers shape students. Honest leaders shape communities. Ordinary people performing quiet acts of courage often leave the deepest marks on history, even if their names disappear with time. Derinkuyu reminds us that greatness is not always visible. Sometimes it is hidden beneath the surface, patiently waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The same can be true of human potential. Many people spend their lives believing they are ordinary because the world has not yet seen what lies beneath. Yet hidden strengths often reveal themselves only when life demands them. Just as volcanic stone concealed an entire city for centuries, every person carries abilities, resilience, creativity, and courage that remain invisible until challenged by adversity. Perhaps that is why the story of Derinkuyu continues to captivate millions around the world. It is not simply about a forgotten underground city. It is about what human beings become when they refuse to surrender. It proves that intelligence can defeat overwhelming force, preparation can overcome uncertainty, and hope can survive even when sunlight disappears. Centuries ago, thousands of people trusted these stone walls with everything they loved. Today, those same walls stand as silent witnesses to one of history's greatest lessons. Civilizations are remembered not because they never faced hardship, but because they found extraordinary ways to endure it. And somewhere beneath the peaceful landscape of Cappadocia, those ancient passages continue to wait in quiet darkness, reminding every visitor who walks them that history's greatest treasures are rarely made of gold. More often, they are built from courage, sacrifice, imagination, and the unshakable belief that tomorrow is always worth preparing for. As we leave the underground city of Derinkuyu and step once again into the sunlight, it's worth asking ourselves a simple question. If ordinary people, armed with little more than determination, patience, and a shared purpose, could create something this extraordinary centuries ago, what remarkable things might still be possible today? History is far more than a collection of dates and ruins. It is humanity's greatest library of courage, ingenuity, and resilience, waiting for anyone willing to listen. Every forgotten city, every hidden temple, every mysterious mountain, and every remarkable journey carries lessons that continue to shape our lives long after the people who live them are gone. Here at Tilt and Chill, that is the journey we share together, not merely visiting fascinating places, but discovering the unforgettable human stories that make them timeless. If this adventure sparked your curiosity, inspired you, or simply reminded you that the world is far more extraordinary than it first appears, then you're exactly where you belong. Subscribe, join us on the next adventure, and together we'll continue uncovering the places where history, mystery, and the triumph of the human spirit meet. Until next time, keep wondering, keep exploring, and never stop looking beyond the obvious. Because the next great story may be waiting in the last place anyone thinks to search.